Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 8 of the Firefighters Podcast. With me this week, we're very lucky to have Don Blasckovich, retired from the FDNY, who got on in 1958, I believe. And he's here to tell us about the fatal fire on Wooster Street of that same year, I believe, right? So, everybody, here's Don. Don, welcome.
Hello. Well, by way of introduction, I was born June the 9th, 1932, in Bellevue Hospital right here in Manhattan. And I took the fire department test in 1957 with my brother. And so, let's see, being 89 years old, my memory is somewhat tainted, but I'm going to do the best I could, okay?
All right. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I was appointed in 1957, and I lived on 7th Street and between 2nd and 3rd Avenue at McSorley's Ale House. Everybody knows that. And that's the street I lived until my uncle took me away. My uncle, his name was Sam. You get it? Uncle Sam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Went 4 years in the Air Force.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get back onto the job. I was stationed in 13 engine at 155 Mercer Street. That's between Prince and Houston. And I used to be able to walk to work in 15 minutes because I lived with my mother at that time on 7th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. So I finished my tour. I would just jump into my clothes. In 15 minutes, my mother would have a nice hot meal for me. It's not like today. These guys are traveling 2 hours or more to get one way to get home. It's a rough situation with the rent business. The biggest fire that I ever went to was in 1958. I was fourth class fireman, and it was at Worcester Street, right around the corner from Mercer Street, where we worked. It was a very cold night. It was about 10 degrees. It was freezing. And it was very windy. And what happened is this. At that time in the fire department, on Broadway, there had to be a fireman posted in each theater. What our job was to check the exits, make sure nobody's smoking, make sure everything is nice and safe. And when the show was over, we would come back to the firehouse. And so at this time, it was 6 o'clock. I reported for duty, changed my clothes to my working clothes. And at 7 o'clock, I had to put on my uniform, my dress uniform, to go to the shows. So I jumped in a subway, and I was up there in 49th Street, and I did my duty. And at the end of the show, I went back to the firehouse, and I saw the companies were out, and I saw where they were, and I could see the smoke. So I changed into my fire clothing, and I went over to Worcester Street, and the place was really going strong. The fire had been on for a long time. The fire was on when I was at the show at the Music Box Theater. When I got there, I was told to mount what I call the fire cannon. That's the big nozzle on top of the engine company. I call it the water cannon. Right. My job was to to shoot that water up to the first and second and third floor. It was a building that was 5 stories high, and it was loaded with twine and bales and rolls of paper, so that when water hit the fire, it was absorbed by these materials, making it very, very heavy. And there was also machinery on these floors. And I worked earlier in the day when I went to work. I worked with fireman Blumenthal. He was a fourth grade fireman. He was good friends. I worked every tour with him. And there was a fellow, his name was Schmidt. Now, unfortunately, Schmidt was detailed to load a 20 from another company, and he died. Blumenthal just returned from his honeymoon, and he died, along with 4 patrolmen. Now, patrolmen were people that were hired by insurance companies to bring tarpaulins and cover the material so that there wouldn't be much damage. They would always operate below the fire floor, and they wore red hats. When I first got on the job, I used to see these guys with red hats, and I used to see the regular guys. I said, "What the hell are those guys with red hats? What is it, commissioner or something?" No, they're fire patrol. And so I worked the whole night there, and word got around that they were missing firefighters and fire patrolmen, and it was goddamn cold. Excuse my expression.
It's okay.
Very, very, very cold. Everything was freezing. The commissioner, he called for a thawing apparatus, which was subsequently sent to Mercer Street to battle the blaze. The entire building was collapsed right to the floor level. It was just an incredible sight. And for a young guy who was 4th grade fireman, that was very shocking. So that was the biggest fire. The strangest fire that I ever went to was on a passenger ship in the Hudson River. We were operating inside, and for some reason, the boat started to list, and we were all ordered to get out. I really never saw the flames, but there was a lot of smoke, because if you ever went to these ships, you know, there's big compartments, and there's other compartments, and you get lost in that place. You get lost in that situation. And so that was the strangest place. One of the saddest things I ever had, I went to Proby School with this fellow. I became very good friends with him, Jack Crossway, and he lived in the Bronx, and he was one of the companies up there, the busy companies, and I was in 13 engine. One day, I read the fire department newspaper, and I saw he got killed. I didn't even know that. I saw he was killed. I read the story. I couldn't believe it. Jack Crossway, it was like an explosion. He went out the window, and he was impaled by a fence. And poor Jack.
Was this at a fire? Is that a job?
Yeah, that was a fire.
Yeah.
It was in a tenement. It was a tenement. Worked in tenement areas, you know. Mm-hmm. Us in 13 engine, we worked in the loft building. For those people who don't know what a loft building is. They're factory buildings, they're storage buildings. There are no residents in there at that time.
Right.
However, as time went by, the loft buildings became empty. Companies moved out, more fires occurred, and there were a lot of space now. And the artists around what's that area? Anyway, all the artists saw an opportunity to have big space to live there, to have their studios there, and the rents would be not so exorbitant.
Yeah.
So at that time, the fire department says, you people can't do that. Well, they got pissed off and they got together and they summoned the it'll come to me.
All right, take your time.
And they summoned the people who ran the government at that time. They wanted those places. So the fire department and town hall, they made a pact. They said this: you gotta get a sign. It's gotta be like 8 feet long and 3 feet wide, painted white with black lettering. The lettering should say AIR, artists and residents, so that when we come there after 5 o'clock, when people went to work, went home from the factories and the loft areas, we would know we went there at 2 or 3 in the morning that there were people in this building, and we have to make an extraordinary effort to get them out. That happened, and there were a lot of signs all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, town hall says you don't have to do that. It's not necessary now, okay? So that ended the big signs and the walls all over the place. And artists came in more and more. And I don't have to tell you, that turned out to be what they call Soho, which is south of Houston Street. Some people say Houston, it ain't right, it's Houston. And okay. It was always troubling with us because we were still dealing with materials that were dangerous.
Yeah.
And even though they were allowed to live there, people, that made us all the more worrisome.
Right. They used oils, right? A lot of oils and stuff like that, and chemicals for their art, right? And they added subdivisions that you wouldn't have known about, and that kind of stuff.
Yes, and they had flammable liquids around, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So when Commissioner Kavanaugh, there were 6 people dying in that fire, ordered inspections of every factory and every loft area in the whole city. So that's why inspections came about. We would go in, and first of all, if there was a door lock, we would issue a summons.
Right.
And this is our inspections. Exits, 30 floors, extinguishers, pails of water. That we gave companies anywhere from the next day to 2 weeks, even 3 weeks to get it complied with, like
Right.
even painted fire escapes. I remember sometimes with me on the fire escapes that were so old that the whole company is going to fall down with the hose lines. You know,
Right.
talk 6 guys on the fire escape, and how much does that water weigh? A lot of weight. And I was always afraid that thing was going to, collapse with us in it.
Yeah.
Haven't heard from Bruce yet, bro.
So when I had 9 years on the job, I transferred to 287 engine in Queens, in Corona. Why
Okay.
did I love new 20 truck, but there was an officer that was a rat kind of guy. And I wanted to get rid of him by way of me going to another company. So I was with this company for 1 month. And what did they do? Gamble all the time. From 25, 50 cents, you guys would go home without a paycheck
Yeah.
and say, this is not for me. We did in a firehouse, we had a pool table, a ping pong table, a basketball court, a handball court. They're gambling. So I went back to 13 engine. I retransferred and I
Okay.
back to my company where I was very happy. I was at that time, I had about 9 years on a job, so I was not a Johnny when I
Yeah.
went to the
Yeah. I worked in that firehouse myself. I worked in 136 for a couple months.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I understand that you were in a squad unit.
I was in squad 18. Yeah. Not
Now,
too
let me
far.
tell you, in 1957, when I got on a job, they created the squad units. Now, what was that supposed to be? Manpower.
Right.
So I'm thinking like this. Oh, these guys are going to help us with the hose up the stairs. That's all they do. They just help us. Bring me a tool. Come here with it. But I understand that today, squad units are very, I wouldn't say that they're like the rescue units, but they're very well trained in all areas of using equipment,
Mhm.
and they have a very good reputation, and I salute them for that. I got to get rid of that idea. Hey, come over here, help me with those. That idea.
You sound like Mike Toll. He was always
So
breaking the squad chops.
eventually, it was a very, very cold morning, and I was going to work, and I slipped about 4 or 5 times going into the subway, so other people too. So I got to work, and after a few minutes, we got a call, an alarm. We had bells at that time. We didn't have nice people saying sweet things. Please, 13 engine, would you like to go to a fire today? And so while I was stretching a line from the pumper onto the streets where it had been raining and it's slippery, slick ice. And I went down and I smashed my knee onto the street. It hurt, but I was very lucky that when I went back to quarters, when we took up, that I had a good lieutenant. He says, Don, put it in the book. I was not going to put in the book, but my legs started to bother me day after day. And thank God I would put it in the book. I got hurt, blah, blah, blah. With that, now here's the nasty part about it. I was complaining so much about my, and I was going sick, and they didn't like that. Fire department, I hate to
Right.
say it, but I love the fire department. They didn't believe because they didn't have arthroscopies in those days. If you were sick and you had a bad, they didn't really believe it.
Yeah.
So one morning, I look out the window and I see a red car. It's a chief's car. No, I see MD. It's a doctor. Doctor comes in, is examining my leg, and he says, "You know something? I don't see anything wrong with your leg." He says, "You know what? You're going to work tomorrow." I says, "I can't." He says, "If you don't go to work tomorrow, I'm hooking you up. I'm hooking you up. That means I'm going on trial."
Right.
I called the Manhattan trustee and I said, Benny Messina, Benny, this guy wants to hook me up. He says, "Look, go to the hospital, tell him you can't walk. It hurts. But give me 20 minutes. Wait by the telephone." So I waited 20 minutes. He says, "We made a deal. You're going to a psychiatrist tomorrow." I love that. I saw that. So I went to the psychiatrist. I answered questions like, what does it mean when no when nothing grows? It'll come to me in a second. And he made me count backwards from 100 up, skipping 7 numbers. Okay, like
Right.
100, 93, whatever that was after that, and other questions like that. People shouldn't people who do this shouldn't throw stones. I think you might have heard that saying.
Right.
Of course, again, I'm telling you because I'm 89 and a lot of my stuff has been pushed into the back of my mind, and I have a hard time sometimes remembering. So I decided I'm going to have the operation. They found out that I had lots of ligaments and stuff torn. And Dr. Pick at that time was a wonderful doctor. And he said to me after he operated, he said, "Kid," he said, "you got $1 million you got $1 million injury." "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Well, it's not like a ceiling fell on you when you're crippled. Like my cousin, he worked in the Bronx. Ceiling fell on him. He can't hardly walk today."
Mm-hmm.
And he
Could relate to that.
You could walk, but you can't do these certain things. And you're not you're disabled, so to speak.
Right.
I was glad because I was right to the fire department that I was telling the truth. That was very important for me.
Absolutely.
My 3/4. And they put me in DO 11. DO means District Office 11 on Hooper Street in Brooklyn. You know what my job was? That's Bedford-Stuyvesant. I was to collect money for the oil burner permits. You know what my lieutenant said? By 12 o'clock, get out of there. Because it was a very tough neighborhood.
Yeah.
Get out by 12 o'clock. Do your work in the morning where they're still sleeping. So I was in DO 11, and then I was put on what they call limited service. Limited service for those who are not familiar with the fire department. Limited service means that you have an injury and you are going to be dismissed from the firehouse. by virtue of the line of injury which you incurred. So I was working in a limited office for a while, but before that, they put me on light duty. Oh, I hated light duty. Boring. Put me down in Brooklyn, filing cards. Boring.
Right.
Got out of that one too. So I got my three quarters on February the 1st in February the 1st. It'll come to me. And that was it. I was happy to get three quarters, obviously, but I was very unhappy that I had to leave the firehouse.
Yeah.
And the men that I worked with is a wonderful camaraderie, teams. I did enjoy fires, but it was a dangerous situation also. You know, collapse was around every corner.
Mm-hmm. Did you respond to the 23rd Street collapse?
No, I didn't.
No.
But while we were working on the Worcester Street collapse, a fourth alarm occurred on Avenue D, on like 11th Street and Avenue D. So from firemen who were working on the Worcester Street job, they took a bunch of them and they put them down where they a fourth alarm, and it was bitter cold, very bitter cold. And now I'm trying to think of some other instances in my career that are worth mentioning, but unfortunately, that's a long time ago. It's 50 or more years ago. And, you know, you and these guys around here, we're all going to suffer loss in memory to some extent with age. But I'm going to tell you this, about 5 or 20, they're now located on Lafayette Street. We were on Mercer Street. I came here, see, when New York was on the bum, okay, before Emperor Giuliani came along, it was filthy, dirty, hookers, you know, all that stuff. And I said to my wife, we got to move out of here. Well, where are we going to go to? Another place in New York? So I met a friend who visited me from Massachusetts. And I told her, we want to get out of here. Where can we go? She says, you know what? I know somebody in real estate in Rockport, Massachusetts. So I went up there and I bought the place in 10 seconds. Bought it in 10 seconds. It's a wonderful town. It's an artist colony. And I wish every brother here to come and visit us because they'll take your fishing poles. I love the trip. It's 6 hours to get here. We got here Friday.
Okay.
We left at 7 o'clock in the morning. My friend Jimmy, you'll meet him in a little while. And so we have been doing this trip to 20 for the last at least 6 years. So now I get to know the guys, the names, the faces.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of names here because you got the Rack Squad, you got the Rebreather,
Yeah.
A battalion and division together, which we never had. We only had a battalion in our quarters. So you have a lot of people here to try to familiarize the names. And so I've been coming here, as I said, it's a wonderful place. You see, these firemen here, they're young guys, you know?
Mhm.
And when I tell them, and they find out how old I am, there's a great respect for me. Don, how was it in 1957? Tell us about the fires. How many this? How was it then? How was it that? And I would tell them, and with that comes a respect. Hey, this guy, he was there when the big fires were. And we got to treat him right, you know. And
Yeah.
they treat me like a king. They treat me like a king. For instance, the lieutenant gave me his room for the night. Lieutenant McNamara.
Yeah.
All
He's
these
he's a good guy.
the brother, wonderful people. They give me their. I don't sleep with the bunks in a big bunk room with all the guys snoring. My own room. I got my own toilet, my own shower.
Yeah.
I like $1 million. So I come here all the time. And,
That's great.
And there's more to my story, but unfortunately, I can't recall. It's too dismal. Not dismal. It's shrouded in my memory.
That's all right. Well,
Nope.
you've told us a lot.
When I am going home with Jimmy, we got a 6-hour ride. I'll say, "Oh, Jimmy, you know, I forgot to tell him about that fire. I forgot to tell him about that one, and that one, and that one." And I'll remember later. But I guess, you know, I don't even know what a pod thing is. What you have, I don't know what that is. So, I want to tell you. You know what I want to tell you? I want to tell you, you can't beat the brothers, the camaraderie. You can't replace how they treat me. It makes me feel like I'm grateful to be a fireman. It was a good job. Money was, even in those days, you know, they make good money today, but in those days, we didn't make great money.
Yeah.
They get overtime today, which they deserve. We had to do overtime. We got zilch, nothing, not a dime's worth. I was acting lieutenant. I never got acting lieutenant's pay for that, for those 15 hours. Zilch, nothing. You know what they would do? Take the afternoon off. Yeah, that's great.
Right.
What am I gonna do in the afternoon? Yeah, and we had a lot of perks, like we could trade. We could trade shifts with the guys.
Mhm.
You work for me, I'll work for you. Jewish holiday come, the Jewish guys would work for us for Christmas. And it was like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I tell you, eating in this firehouse is like eating in Paris. It's never been a bad meal here, even breakfast. You know what we had for breakfast in those days? Coffee and a bun. You know what we got today here? Fried eggs with bacon, buns, anything. Guys are cooking something up for breakfast with ham and eggs. I couldn't believe it when I got here after 40 years. I couldn't believe it. Oh, now, here's another thing. Okay, stories come to me as they come along.
Okay.
In the old days, they would take one man to do the shopping. It was not allowed, but nobody said anything. He come back, his arms were full of food, meats and bread and whatever, vegetables. And he'd come in and then we'd all cook it up. Today, they could take the rig out. We go to Whole Foods with,
Yeah.
you know, they take me with them because I was once a fireman and I have that privilege. You
Right.
understand? And
Mhm.
my friend Jimmy, he is a volunteer fireman, and they couldn't take him because could something happen, he was not a fireman. So I had that privilege, and I would. These guys are going with the rig. 6 guys are going in the store.
Yeah.
He's going there. Who's going there? How do you deal with that?
Right.
Radio. So
Well, I was
we
going
had
to say they all have radios now.
the old kind of radio we had, like this. Hey you, open that window. That's bizarre. That was the radio. I tell you. So these things. Oh, the rigs. These rigs are twice as big and powerful as the rigs we had.
Sure.
When a 20 truck ran on a run, they had the running boards on both sides, and you would stay on the running board with your hand on the ladder so you don't fall off.
Right.
And it was raining, snowing. That's how they. Then they come in with the cabs with the. Now I'll tell you what I don't like about the cabs and what I do like about it. Well, it was initiated because people were throwing stones and rocks and bricks down from the roofs, and the guys were getting hurt. So you go into an engine like I went to 20 truck. I went on a couple of runs with it as I was supposed to. Like I said, I had that privilege.
Mhm.
What happens? It's so heavy that the whole rig jumps, boom, boom,
Yeah.
every pothole, boom. In the engine where I was on, we had a back step, and you put your arm around this middle hook,
Right.
and if you hit anything, your knees would act as cushions. See, whereas the trucks now go boom, like this up and down, and it was not a happy ride. But I'm glad I did. I probably in 6 years I probably did about 3 runs, and oh, story.
Okay.
Well, there was a chief here called Cooney. He was in the RAC squad. So I come here, and he's working. See, he introduces me. He introduces himself to me, and he says, "My name is Chief Cooney." Nice, Don Blasckovich. I says, "Cooney, you know, we used to play softball because fire departments, firehouses had teams in softball, and we played each other and on the East River, where the East River is."
Right.
So I said to Truman, "You know, I used to play ball with a guy like Cooney." He says, "Yeah, that was my father.
Wow.
I was playing ball with his father when I was young and when he was young." Yeah, he
Yeah.
says, "That was my father. You know what?" He says he's got 10 kids today. I says, "Oh my God, he's playing a different kind of ball." So that was nice.
Yeah.
The same night, he says to me, I gotta go to Williamsburg to pick up something." He says, "You want to take a ride?" I says, "Yeah, sure." So I get the chief's car, and we're going there, and he's a RAC squad. What happens? There's a fourth alarm in Brooklyn. So we get stuck. I can't go back here. I gotta go. It was raining. Chief Cooney, there must have been about 35 rigs. he's going this way, that way. I'm going to lose him. And then if I lose him, what am I going to do? Am I going to call? Hey, there's a chief over there. Hey, chief, I'm lost. So I was running with him. I was getting wet and cold.
Yeah.
And I got to his command station, and his driver took me back to his car. I put the heater on. I felt better. But I went to the fourth alarm when I was 88 years old. The place was still roaring on the top floor. It was still going on.
Yeah.
We got to the meal about 9 o'clock at night. We ate dinner, supper.
All right. Well, why didn't you get up on the deck gun and help him out a little bit?
Those things, you know, I hurt my knees. Okay,
Yeah.
I can't climb. I can't climb on those things anymore. You know, I can't jump on this and I can't do that. I got to take it easy. Especially, I got a little arthritis. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna get it too.
Yeah, I have it. Don't worry.
Sarah, you're gonna get it too. You're not gonna get away with it. Territory. And
All right. Well, I know Chow's on over there. I don't want to keep you, but we really appreciate your stories, Don. I think it's important for everybody to hear those old time stories, and we're glad you're still here to tell them.
well, it's a pleasure to meet you, and it's a pleasure that your mother had your brother who became a captain here in 20 trucks. He's a wonderful man.
Yeah, he's all right.
I got big respect now for squad units. I had off to you. Not in the old days. But nowadays.
All right. I won't tell anybody. All right, guys. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Take care.
My pleasure.
Be safe.
You too.